The old alien adjusted the weight of his armor as if it still mattered, even though the war had ended decades ago. The metal plates were scratched and faded, the once glowing insignia now dull, but he wore it every night without fail. Around him, the tavern hummed with quiet conversations, the low murmur of different species blending into something almost peaceful. Almost. No one noticed him at first. They never did. Until he started speaking. "You want to hear about humans," he said, his voice carrying farther than it should have for someone so tired. A few heads turned. A bartender paused mid-pour. Someone laughed nervously. The old alien did not smile. "I fought them," he continued. "I survived them. And that makes me one of the very few who can tell you what they're really like." Silence spread, slow and heavy. He leaned forward, his eyes reflecting something far away. "When we first detected Earth, we thought it would be easy." A few listeners shifted closer. "We were wrong." The old alien exhaled, as if the memory itself weighed more than his armor. "Our empire had conquered 1,000 systems. We had broken civilizations far more advanced than humans. We had a raised species that could manipulate gravity like breathing. Compared to them, humans were nothing. Divided, primitive, still fighting among themselves, still bound to a single fragile planet." He let that sink in. "So we did what we always did. We sent a fleet." His claw tapped lightly against the table. "It was supposed to be a demonstration. A show of force. We expected surrender before we even reached their orbit." He shook his head slowly. "They greeted us with missiles." A few listeners blinked. "Yes," he said. "Missiles. Crude, chemical-driven weapons. We laughed at first. Our shields could withstand antimatter bursts. What could the primitive explosives do?" He paused. "They did not try to break our shields." A murmur ran through the room. "They targeted our sensors, our communications, our navigation arrays. They blinded us." The alien's voice lowered. "And then they started adapting." He leaned back slightly, remembering. "At first, their attacks were chaotic, disorganized, different factions, different strategies. But then, something changed. Within days, their entire planet coordinated as one. Nations that had been enemies for centuries suddenly shared technology, resources, intelligence." He looked around the room, making sure they understood. "They unified faster than any species we had ever seen." Someone whispered, "Impossible." The old alien tilted his head. "That's what we thought." He continued. "They studied our ships. Every shot we fired, every maneuver we made, they analyzed it. Within weeks, their weapons evolved. They modified their missiles to slip through the smallest fluctuations in our shields. They created projectiles that didn't explode on impact, but inside our systems." His claw tightened. "They turned our own technology against us before they even understood it fully." The tavern was completely silent now. "We responded with overwhelming force," he said. "We always did. We deployed orbital strikes. We targeted their military bases, their infrastructure, their cities." He stopped. "They did not surrender." A long pause followed. "They hid," he said softly. "Not just underground. Everywhere. They scattered their command centers, decentralized their operations. You could destroy one city, and another would take its place instantly. You could eliminate a leader, and 10 more would rise." His eyes darkened. "They did not fight like a single organism. They fought like a storm." The old alien leaned forward again. "I was there during the second wave." He tapped his chest. "I was a commander then. Proud, confident, certain of victory." He let out a bitter sound. "We entered low orbit over what they called an ocean. Vast, empty water. No targets. No resistance." He paused. "That's when they struck." His voice dropped to a whisper. "They came from below." A listener frowned. "Below?" "Yes," the alien said. "Submersible craft. Primitive by our standards. But they had been waiting. Hidden beneath the water, shielded from our scans." He gestured with his claw. "They launched thousands of projectiles simultaneously. Not at our weapons. Not at our engines. At our cooling systems." He shook his head slowly. We didn't even know they had identified that vulnerability. The room remained frozen. Our ships overheated within minutes. Systems failed. Shields collapsed. And then they hit us again. He closed his eyes briefly. I watched an entire fleet fall apart without a single direct hit. The alien opened his eyes again. That was the moment we realized. We were not dealing with a primitive species. He let the words hang. We were dealing with something else. A long silence followed before he continued. The war escalated after that. His voice grew heavier. We adapted too. We always do. We deployed ground forces. We established footholds. We began the slow process of occupation. He looked down at his armor. That's when I met them face to face. A few listeners leaned in closer. They were smaller than us. Weaker. Slower. By every measurable metric. Inferior. He paused. And yet, they kept coming. He tapped the table again, rhythmically. You could outgun them. You could outmatch them. But you could not break them. His voice hardened. I saw humans fight with broken limbs. I saw them continue after injuries that would kill any of us instantly. I saw them use tools, debris, even their own bodies as weapons. He swallowed, and I saw something else. The room seemed to tighten around him. They protected each other. A listener blinked. All species do that. The alien shook his head. No, not like this. He leaned forward again. I saw a human drag 3 wounded comrades through open fire instead of retreating. I saw one stand alone against an entire unit just to give others time to escape. His voice dropped. I saw one sacrifice themselves to destroy a single one of our walkers. The alien paused, his expression distant. They knew they would die. And they did it anyway. The silence was suffocating now. That is when fear began. He let that word settle. Not fear of defeat, he clarified. We had faced that before. This was different. He looked at them, one by one. We began to fear what humans would do next. A long breath escaped him. They did not follow patterns. They did not adhere to logic the way we understood it. They made decisions that seemed irrational. Until they worked. He tapped his temple. They thought differently. He continued. We tried psychological warfare. We broadcast messages, threats, displays of power. He gave a hollow laugh. They responded with jokes. Confusion spread across a few faces. Yes, he said. Jokes. They mocked us. They turned our threats into entertainment. They refused to be intimidated. He shook his head. How do you conquer a species that refuses to be afraid? No one answered. We escalated again, he said quietly. We always do. His voice grew heavy. We prepared a final strike. A weapon capable of rendering their planet uninhabitable. Total annihilation. A few gasps echoed. We were ready, he said. The order was given. He paused. And then something happened. The alien's eyes narrowed slightly. They reached out. The listeners exchanged glances. Yes, he said. After everything, after all the destruction, the losses, they sent a message. He leaned forward. Not a surrender. A pause. A negotiation. Someone whispered, why? The alien's gaze sharpened. That's what we couldn't understand. He continued. They offered terms. Cooperation. Exchange of knowledge. Peace. He scoffed softly. We thought it was a trick. He looked down briefly. Maybe it was. But we accepted the meeting. His voice slowed. I was part of the delegation. The room held its breath. We landed on their world. A neutral zone. No weapons. No armies. He paused. They came unarmed. Another silence. I remember looking at him. He said. Fragile. Soft. Nothing like the warriors we had fought. He shook his head slightly. And yet, I felt something I had never felt before. He looked up. Respect. The word lingered. They spoke of rebuilding. Of moving forward. Of learning from each other. He leaned back. They did not ask for revenge. A listener frowned. After everything you did to them. The alien nodded slowly. Yes. He exhaled. That was the moment we lost. Confusion flickered across several faces. We had prepared for endless war, he explained. For resistance. For hatred. He looked around. We were not prepared for forgiveness. The tavern remained utterly silent. Our empire withdrew, he said. Not because we were defeated in battle, but because we realized something far more dangerous. He paused. Humans do not just fight to win. A breath. They fight to survive, to protect, to endure. He tapped his chest again. And when the fighting stops, they rebuild faster than anything we have ever seen. He looked distant again. They turned a war zone into a thriving world in less than a decade. A faint, almost amused expression crossed his face. And they invited us back. He shook his head slowly. Not as conquerors. A pause. As allies. The old alien fell silent for a long moment. The tavern did not move. Finally, someone asked softly, "So what are humans, really?" The alien looked up. "Tired," he said simply. A few listeners blinked. "Yes," he continued. "Tired of fighting. Tired of losing. Tired of pain." He leaned forward one last time. "But if you threaten them," his eyes sharpened, "they will become something else entirely." A long pause. "And you will not survive it." The room remained frozen as he stood up slowly, his armor creaking softly with the movement. He placed a small payment on the table and turned toward the door. No one stopped him. No one spoke. As he reached the exit, he paused briefly. Without turning around, he added one final sentence. "We thought we were teaching them how to fear." A breath. They were teaching us how to be better. And then he was gone. The door had barely finished closing behind him when the silence inside the tavern broke. It did not shatter all at once. It cracked slowly, like ice under pressure. "Wait." The voice came from the far end of the room. Young, uncertain, the old alien stopped. For a moment, it seemed like he might ignore it. His posture remained still, his back turned, one claw resting lightly on the doorframe. Then he exhaled. "You want more," he said without turning. The young one stepped forward. "You said that was when you lost. But that doesn't make sense. You left. You survived. Your empire still exists." A faint murmur of agreement followed. The old alien's head tilted slightly. "Yes," he said. "That is what we told ourselves." He turned slowly, his eyes scanning the room again. "But that is not the end of the story." No one moved. He walked back to the table, slower this time, as if each step carried weight from another time. He did not sit immediately. Instead, he rested both claws on the surface and leaned forward. "You think war ends when the weapons go silent," he said. "It does not." He finally lowered himself into the seat. "It follows you." A pause. "It changes you." His gaze drifted, not at anyone in particular, but somewhere far beyond them. "When we returned to our systems, we expected things to continue as they always had. New targets, new campaigns, new victories." His claw tapped once. But something had shifted. He looked at them again. "In us." The bartender leaned in slightly, forgetting the drink still in his hand. "We began to question things," the old alien continued. "Orders that once seemed absolute, no longer felt that way. Strategies we had followed for centuries, suddenly seemed flawed." A listener frowned. "Because of humans." The alien nodded once. "They had shown us something we did not understand. Something we could not measure." His voice lowered. "Restraint." A few exchanged confused glances. "Yes," he said. "Restraint. The ability to destroy, and choosing not to." He let that settle. "Our empire was not built on restraint. It was built on dominance." He leaned back slightly. "And once you begin to question dominance, everything begins to unravel." The room remained quiet. "There were disagreements," he said carefully. "Among leadership. Among commanders. Among soldiers." He looked down at his armor again. "I was sent on another mission." A few listeners straightened. "A distant system," he continued. "A species on the edge of early spaceflight. No unified government. No advanced defenses." He paused. "It was supposed to be routine." A bitter tone crept into his voice. "It always is." The young one from before spoke again. "And was it?" The old alien looked at them. "No," He tapped the table again, slower this time. When we arrived, I gave the standard orders. Establish orbit. Disable communications. Prepare for demonstration strike. He stopped, and then I hesitated. The room seemed to tighten again. I had never hesitated before, he admitted. Not once in my entire career. His eyes narrowed slightly, but something about it felt wrong. A long pause followed, so I did something I had never done before. He leaned forward. I waited. A few listeners shifted uneasily. You delayed an order, someone asked. Yes, he said simply. The word hung in the air like a violation. I told myself it was tactical, that I needed more data, that I was being cautious. He shook his head slightly. But the truth is, I was remembering Earth. Silence. I was remembering what happens when you underestimate a species. When you assume they will break. He exhaled. And I was wondering, what if they don't? The bartender finally set the untouched drink down. What happened? He asked quietly. The old alien's gaze sharpened again. They responded. A ripple of tension moved through the room. Not with weapons, he clarified. With signals. He tapped his temple. Primitive, unrefined, but clear. He paused. They were trying to communicate. A few listeners blinked. We had protocols for that, he continued. Standard procedure. Ignore. Proceed with operation. He leaned back. I did not follow protocol. The room felt heavier now. I ordered a response, he said. A stunned silence followed. You? What? Someone whispered. I opened a channel, the alien repeated calmly. He looked around at them. And I listened. A long pause. They were afraid, he said. Not panicked, not chaotic, afraid, but controlled. He tapped the table again. They asked questions. Who we were, what we wanted. He stopped, and I realized, they were trying to understand us before deciding how to respond. The young listener frowned. Isn't that normal? The old alien's expression hardened slightly. No, he said. It is not. He leaned forward again. Most species react. They defend. They attack. They surrender. A pause. They do not pause to understand the threat that stands above them. He let that sink in. It reminded me of humans. Silence again. So I made a decision, he continued. His voice dropped slightly. I stood down the fleet. The reaction was immediate. A few gasps, a sharp intake of breath, a low murmur spreading across the room. You disobeyed direct orders, someone said. Yes, he replied, without hesitation. I did. The room felt like it might collapse under the weight of that admission. What happened to you? The young one asked. The old alien's gaze softened slightly. Nothing, he said. Confusion flickered across several faces. Nothing happened, he repeated. At least, not immediately. He leaned back. We established communication. We learned about them, their culture, the divisions, their fears. He paused. And they learned about us. A faint shift passed through his expression. They did not respond with hostility. He looked around again. They responded with curiosity. Another silence. And in that moment, he said quietly, I understood something I had not fully grasped before. He leaned forward one last time. Humans were not an exception. The room went still. They were a possibility. No one spoke. They showed us what a species could become, he continued. Not through power, not through conquest, a pause, but through choice. The weight of his words pressed down on everyone present. So I chose, he said. His voice was steady. I chose not to destroy that world. A long silence followed, and when the command came to proceed with the strike, he stopped. I refused. The word echoed. What happened then? The bartender asked, his voice barely above a whisper. The old alien exhaled slowly. This time, something did happen. He looked down briefly. I was removed from command. Stripped of rank. Brought before the High Council. The room remained frozen. They called it insubordination, dereliction, weakness. His claw tightened slightly. They said I had been compromised. He looked up again. And they were right. A few listeners leaned in closer. I had been changed, he said. By a species we failed to conquer. He paused. And by one we never attacked. Silence. They asked me why, he continued. His voice softened. Why I had disobeyed. Why I had risked everything. He looked around the room again. Do you know what I told them? No one answered. I told them, because I had finally learned how to win. Confusion rippled through the listeners. They did not understand, he said. A faint, almost tired smile appeared. They thought winning meant control, domination, expansion. He shook his head. But humans taught me something else. He leaned forward. Winning is knowing when not to destroy something. A long pause followed. The tavern felt smaller now, as if the walls themselves were listening. What did they do to you? The young one asked. The old alien sat back slowly. They exiled me, he said. Removed me from the military. From command. From everything I had ever known. He gestured lightly around the room. And now, I am here. A quiet settled over the tavern again. But the story does not end there, he added. A few listeners straightened again. Because not everyone agreed with the council. His eyes sharpened slightly. There were others. Soldiers. Commanders. Even some among leadership. He tapped the table once more. They had seen Earth. They had seen what humans could do. A pause. And more importantly, what they chose not to do. The room held its breath. And slowly, he continued, things began to change. He leaned forward again. Operations were delayed. Orders were questioned. Missions were reconsidered. A faint shift in his tone suggested something deeper. The empire did not collapse. He shook his head, but it began to hesitate. The word carried weight. And hesitation, he said quietly, is the beginning of transformation. Silence. Years passed, he continued. Then decades. He looked distant again. And then, a message arrived. The room tightened once more. From Earth, a few listeners exchanged glances. They had expanded beyond their system, he said. Established contact with other species. Built alliances. He paused. And they reached out to us. The bartender frowned. After everything, the old alien nodded. Yes. He leaned forward. They did not demand anything. A pause. They offered something. Silence. Partnership. The word echoed softly. And this time, he said, the council listened. A long breath passed through the room. They remembered Earth, he added. They remembered the cost of underestimating them. He looked around. And perhaps, they remembered something else. He tapped his chest again. That feeling. No one spoke. So they accepted, he said. The room remained completely still. And now, he continued, our empire is no longer what it once was. A pause. It still exists. He looked at them carefully. But it is changing. The old alien slowly stood again. And that, he said, is because of them. He turned toward the door once more. No one tried to stop him this time. But just before he reached it, the young voice spoke again. Do you regret it? The old alien stopped. For a moment, he did not respond. Then he turned his head slightly. No, he said. A pause. I regret that it took us so long. He placed his claw on the door. And if you ever find yourself standing over a world, deciding its fate. He glanced back one final time. Remember this. A breath, the strongest species in the galaxy, is not the one that destroys. The door opened. It is the one that chooses not to. And with that, he stepped out into the night, leaving behind a room full of beings who would never look at the stars the same way again. The night outside was colder than it should have been. The old alien stepped into it without hesitation. The tavern door ceiling shut behind him with a quiet finality. For a moment, he simply stood there, looking up. The stars were different here. They always were. He had spent a lifetime moving between them, fighting beneath them, watching them burn and fade. But tonight, they felt heavier. Not because of what they were, but because of what they meant. Still looking at the sky like it owes you answers. The voice came from the shadows. The old alien did not turn immediately. I stopped expecting answers a long time ago, he replied. A figure stepped forward, its outline becoming clearer under the dim street lights. Taller, broader, armor intact, polished, active. Military. "I was hoping I would find you here," the newcomer said. The old alien finally turned. "I was hoping you wouldn't." A brief silence passed between them. "You've been telling stories again," the armored figure said. "I have," the old alien admitted. "They're spreading. They should." The figure tilted its head slightly. "That's exactly the problem." The old alien's expression did not change. "You didn't come here to argue about stories." "No," the figure said. "I came because of what happens next." A faint shift passed through the air. The old alien studied the figure more carefully now. "You're still in service." "Yes." "Then you shouldn't be here." "Probably not." A pause. "But things are different now." The old alien let out a quiet breath. "I've heard that before." The figure stepped closer. "Not like this." Something in the tone made the old alien focus. "What happened?" he asked. The armored figure hesitated. Then it said the one thing the old alien had not expected. "It's Earth." Silence. The old alien's posture stiffened, just slightly. "What about it?" The figure's voice lowered. "The gone." The words did not make sense at first. "Gone," the old alien repeated. "Vanished," the figure clarified. "No signals. No activity. Entire system silent." The night seemed to deepen. "That's not possible," the old alien said. "We thought so too." A long pause followed. "When?" the old alien asked. 3 cycles ago. And no one told me." The figure gave a faint, almost bitter response. "You're not exactly part of command anymore." The old alien ignored that. "What about their colonies? Their alliances?" The figure shook its head. "Disconnected. Fragmented. Some of their allies haven't heard from them either." The old alien's mind was already moving. "That doesn't happen by accident." "No," the figure agreed. "It doesn't." Another silence. "Who knows?" the old alien asked. "Only the highest levels of command. And now, you." The old alien looked back up at the stars. "Why tell me?" The figure's answer came without hesitation. "Because you understand them." A faint, humorless sound escaped the old alien. "Do I?" "You understand them better than anyone still alive," the figure said. "You fought them. You spoke to them. You saw what they became." The old alien said nothing. "And right now," the figure continued, "we don't know if this is a threat, or something else." The old alien's gaze sharpened. "You think someone attacked them?" "It's one possibility. And the other?" The figure paused. "That they left." The old alien slowly lowered his gaze. "No," he said quietly. "They wouldn't." Quote, "You sound certain." "I am." A long silence followed. "Then we have a problem," the figure said. The old alien turned slightly. "We always have a problem. Not like this." The figure stepped closer again. "We sent probes. Long-range scans. Nothing." A pause. "No debris. No energy signatures. No signs of battle." The old alien's expression darkened. "They didn't fight. That's the strange part." The night felt colder now. "Humans always fight," the old alien said. "Yes," the figure replied. "That's what we thought." Silence stretched. "So either they didn't have time," the old alien murmured, "or they chose not to," the figure finished. That possibility lingered in the air, heavy and unsettling. The old alien finally turned fully toward the figure. "What do you want from me?" The answer came immediately. "We're going there." A long pause. "And we want you with us." The old alien stared at the figure. "You exiled me." "Yes." "You stripped me of rank." "Yes." "You called me compromised." The figure did not look away. "Yes." Another silence. "And now you want my help." "Yes." The old alien studied the figure for a long moment. "Why?" The figure's voice lowered. "Because whatever happened to Earth, it matters." A pause. "And because if there's even a chance they're still out there." The old alien finished the sentence quietly. "We need to understand why." The figure nodded. "Yes." Silence again. The old alien looked back at the stars. For the first time in a long while, something moved behind his eyes. Not memory. Not regret. Something sharper. Purpose. They changed us once, he said. Yes. And now they're gone. Yes. A breath. That's not how their story ends. The figure said nothing. The old alien stepped forward. When do we leave? The answer came without delay. Now. The ship was different from the ones he remembered. Smaller. Faster. Built for precision, not domination. The old alien stood in the center of the command deck, watching the stars shift as they entered transit. You redesigned your fleet, he noted. Yes, the figure replied from the control station. Less aggressive, more efficient. The old alien gave a faint nod. Another change. Silence settled over the deck. How long? He asked. Not long. The old alien crossed his arms. They won't be there. The figure glanced at him. You're certain? Yes. Why? The old alien's gaze remained fixed ahead. Because if humans wanted to disappear, a pause, they would make sure no one could follow. The figure did not respond. Minutes passed, then hours. The stars shifted again. We're here, the figure said. The old alien stepped forward. The main display flickered to life. And there it was. Earth, or what was left of it. The planet still hung in space, blue and white, exactly as it had been. But something was wrong. No satellites, the figure said quietly. No orbital stations, the old alien added. No signals. Silence. Scans, the old alien asked. Running. A few moments passed. Then the figure spoke again. Surface is intact. No signs of large-scale destruction. The old alien narrowed his eyes. Life. A pause. Minimal. The word hit harder than any weapon. Minimal. The old alien repeated. Trace biosigns. Scattered. Weak. The old alien stepped closer to the display. That's not right. No. The figure agreed. It isn't. Quote. Another silence. Take us down, the old alien said. The figure hesitated. That's not protocol. The old alien turned. Neither is this. A moment passed. Then the figure gave the order. The ship descended. Clouds parted. The surface came into view. Cities stood. Buildings remained. But there was no movement. No lights. No life. It looked abandoned. The ship landed. The ramp lowered. The old alien stepped out first. The air was still. Too still. He looked around. I've seen battlefields quieter than this, he said. The figure followed. This isn't a battlefield. No. The old alien agreed. It's something else. They moved through the empty streets. Everything was intact. Vehicles, structures, infrastructure, but no people, no bodies, no signs of struggle. They didn't run, the figure said. No. The old alien replied. They left. Silence. Why? The old alien stopped. Look. The figure followed his gaze. A structure stood ahead, different from the others. Simple. Deliberate. They approached it slowly. At its center was a single device. Inactive. Waiting. The old alien stepped closer. This is human, he said. Yes. Power it. The figure hesitated. Then did it. The device came to life. Light filled the structure. And then, a voice. Human. Clear. Calm. If you are hearing this, then you came looking for us. The old alien did not move. The figure remained still. We knew you would. The voice continued. A pause. We also knew you would not understand. The old alien's eyes narrowed slightly. So we are going to explain. The light shifted. A projection formed. Images. Memories. Humans. Building. Fighting. Learning. Changing. We learned something during the war, the voice said. Something important. A pause. That survival is not enough. The images shifted. Humans reaching beyond their world. Exploring. Connecting. And we realized that if we stayed the same, we would eventually become what we fought. Silence. So we made a choice. The projection changed again. Ships. Massive. Unlike anything the old alien had ever seen. We left. The word echoed. Not to escape, the voice clarified. But to grow. The old alien stepped closer. You left everything behind, he said quietly. Yes, the voice answered. Because some things cannot be built while holding on to the past. The figure looked at him. They abandoned their world, it whispered. No, the old alien said. They evolved. The voice continued. If you are here, then it means you are ready to understand. A pause. Or at least, ready to try. The projection shifted one final time. Coordinates. Unknown. Distant. Far beyond any mapped region. We are not gone, the voice said. We are just ahead. The light dimmed. And if you choose to follow. A final pause. Come prepared to change. The device went silent. The structure returned to darkness. The old alien stood there, unmoving. The figure looked at him. They're inviting us. Yes. Do we go? The old alien took a long breath. Then he looked back at the empty world. They didn't run, he said. They moved forward. A pause. And they left a choice behind. The figure waited. The old alien turned. We follow. The ship rose again. The stars shifted. And for the first time in a long time, the old alien smiled. Humans, he said quietly. Always one step ahead.